This right here is the most powerful, most versatile smart home security camera that you'll be able to buy with your money right now. It's got 3 cameras to cover every single angle, a giant solar panel for eternal power, and a turret dome that tracks anyone that walks in its path. It's the brand new eufy S4, and it's easily my favourite wireless security camera that you can buy. And in today's episode, I'm going to tell you why. Now, you all know that there's 2 schools of thought when it comes to security cameras. Either you sit firmly in the camp of the wireless security cameras, or you sit in the camp of hardwired network security cameras. Now, I have to admit that the benefits of hardwired network cameras is the sheer speed, and I would always recommend a hardwired setup if you can. But I recognise that often that involves a much more invasive procedure of installation than a wireless camera, drilling holes and channeling cables throughout the walls of your house to get the networking cables where you need to get them to power cameras that are hardwired. Wireless cameras, however, are very non-invasive. In theory, you don't even need to screw them into the walls if you use a fancy system of rigging them to drain pipes or other suitable locations. So for over 40% of the British population who are in accommodation that isn't theirs, wireless is by far the best choice. Now, previously, my absolute favourite wireless camera, although there's been many over the years that I've enjoyed using, has been the eufy S340, which came out several years ago now. But this, the S4, is the spiritual successor. They both have a very similar design in that you've got the white main body with the solar panel mountable on top as the integrated panel, all mounted separately, if you wish, by an extended cable, along with the turret underneath that tracks undesirables trying to steal your underwear from your washing line. But the S4 has taken everything we loved about the S340 and supercharged it. Starting with the cameras, straight away you'll see that there's now an additional lens on the body to bring it a total of 3 individual cameras on the device. So now on the turret you've got a wide angle which is designed to track faster motion, and then you've got a zoom lens which can give you a clearer close-up of the movement, and then on the top is the secondary wide, but this one is stationary. Now, the purpose of this third lens is to essentially give it eyes in the back of its head. You can set the turret to look one way, like that for example, and then the fixed camera you can turn to face the other way. Now, if the top camera captures the movement, you can set the turret to then spin round to the same angle to detect that movement, which I think is incredible. You can potentially cover almost all of your grounds around the house with this one camera if positioned right. As well, despite it having 3 cameras, there's no loss of quality. The upper bullet camera is a 4K resolution camera, and the 2 lower ones are 2K resolution each, which is enough considering that one of them is 3 times optical zoom with the ability to zoom in further digitally within the app. All in all, the cameras provide an excellent picture, and this is no different at night too, because all of the cameras are lit by spotlights. So when lit up, because you've got 2 facing in different directions, it lights up a hell of a lot of the ground with just this one device. Of course, there's also IR night vision mode if you want to be a bit more stealthy about your recording at night, and a full colour night vision too, although this only really works if there's ambient light. Well, that's weird. You can kind of see the flashing of the infrared from the phone, but on here, obviously, you can see that it's damn near pitch dark. You can see the window down there. But obviously through the camera that you can see on the left-hand side now, there's a lot more going on. Now, if I switch this to night vision to spotlights, everything should light up a little bit more on there. There you go, you can kind of see everything now. But there's also another mode as well. If I turn this into infrared, we're going back there like that, we'll kind of pitch black again now. Then if I go to off, this is the starlight mode. Look at that. Look how much you can see with the spotlight off. Look, it's up there. You can see the red light shining just behind me. Look at that. It's quite impressive how much you can see with very little ambient light going on. Wow.
I think for me, though, with very little ambient light around and pretty much only the house, the best thing for it is the infrared, obviously. So we'll leave it on that.
Now, when it comes to the tracking element of these cameras, it's very similar to the S340, but overall improved with slightly better range of movement when it comes to the vertical adjustment, meaning you can either capture more vertically or set your camera lower on your walls and still capture the same angles as the S340 did, which would need to have been positioned higher. The S340 was already excellent with its tracking potential in mind, and now the S4 just floors it with its additional improvements. I genuinely have not found anything better when it comes to a tracking camera, and that's partly thanks to the quality and the speed that it tracks, but also the AI that it uses too, which is partly powered by the Homebase 3 if you've got one of those to help it. Now this lets you track every form of movement individually, such as vehicle, pet or human, along with being able to turn on different types of tracking on or off, and even set facial recognition, which albeit we've had for a long time across all of eufy's lineup that works with the Homebase 3. But if you didn't want to pair it with the Homebase 3, you can actually pair it directly to the Wi-Fi too, although you do lose a couple of the finer AI functionality. But in future, you should also be able to pair this with the NVR, which I reviewed not too long ago, if you have a wireless module for the NVR too. This essentially gets the NVR to act as a wireless home base, so for those that want a hybrid system of hardwired and wireless, then it's absolutely possible to use this alongside the S4 Max cameras that go straight into the NVR. Although, that wireless module isn't currently out at the time of this review, so check the link in the description to see that current status. But going back to the AI and tracking, it is perhaps some of my favourite AI of any system that I've tested, or at least it's the most comprehensive I've tested without having to use any third-party systems of software. When watching the cameras capture someone and track them, it feels a little bit like you're a serial killer hiding in the bushes with a pair of binoculars. It is a scary amount of detail, and the AI tracking is frighteningly accurate. The house is always watching. Anyway, the one thing that I wish they'd improve on with the AI are two areas. One being, I'd love to have some sort of ANPR system to log number plates of cars that might pull up on the drive, which I think would provide a more accurate identification of cars. And then secondly, you could pair that if eufy did deeper integration of third-party smart homes. I'd love to be able to set eufy to trigger a routine based on an action from the app. So for example, if the cameras detect a particular number plate, it could send a message to my Alexa system to trigger a smart home action that triggers a routine that perhaps opens garage doors or turn the lights on in the house, or both. Because at the moment, Amazon doesn't support image recognition natively. It would require obviously a little bit of workaround from eufy to add this functionality, but it's absolutely doable, and I would love to see that in future. And I know there are other ways of doing it with things like Home Assistant, but I'm talking in a relatively user-friendly way. There isn't something like that at this moment in time, and I think eufy could do a little bit more just to push that along. But that's the only real thing that I think is missing from this system, because it is truly very comprehensive, and you can see all of the AI's thinking in one place in the security port, which gives you quite a detailed overview of the days or the week's captures, including activity levels and individual person activity. This, of course, isn't limited to just the S4. This is a feature of the entire system, and the S4 kind of slots into that perfectly. Now, moving on from the actual capture quality and the features, the S4 has had a load of other upgrades too, and perhaps the most notable, aside from the additional bullet camera, is, hold on, this, the solar panel, which is a huge difference. And by huge, I mean that both figuratively and literally. On the S4, it's a much bigger panel, which has ultimately resulted in a lot more energy conversion. The S340 managed to do a great job almost all year round, but in the dead of winter, I'd often find that it would need topping up one or two charges. if we'd had significantly bad weather, which, let's face it, that's pretty much every winter for the UK, which hasn't seen the sun in the winter since 1997. But during those periods, the energy gathered from the ambient light just wasn't enough to sustain the camera through those periods. Well, I think that's going to be a thing of the past with this. This is just such a bigger panel, meaning that it can pull a lot more of the ambient light on grey days, and on nice sunny days it can drink a lot more of the sun's energy, working quicker and more efficiently to top up as much of the internal battery as possible. I was a little bit naughty and didn't charge the battery of the camera before I put it up, and it actually charged it from around 50% to full. And to be fair, we've had an absolutely monstrous, miserable month. So I'm more than pleased with this update, but obviously the amount of battery that you use will be very circumstantial to you. If you have it in a higher traffic area where it's pinging you every other minute and recording footage, it's going to eventually run out, even with the incredible update to the panel. So you may eventually need to charge the device still to manually keep it operational, which is where another change comes into play with the S4. On the S340, a long-term usage criticism that I have is that to charge it manually, you had to actually detach the device entirely, take it indoors and plug it in, which was a little bit silly really, for the numerous obvious reasons. But with the S4, you've now got a hot swappable battery that's accessible on the underside like this. So you can take it out without having to remove the entire device off the wall, and the battery itself can be charged by a USB-C, which makes so much more sense. So a massive clap for eufy for adding this to the S4. It was exactly what the doctor ordered. Incidentally, you can actually power this via a cable connection if you didn't want to use the solar panel or the battery, and by doing so you can actually use this to utilize it to record 24/7 as well, rather than just triggering events to save the battery life, which I don't think was something that you could do with the S340. So I think a lot of people will be quite pleased by that. And with all of these changes and updates introduced with the S4, I've got to say that it's the best wireless security camera that I've ever tested. Come on, it's got the most powerful recording capabilities, the most functional AI, and the most versatility of anything that I've ever tested, and it's landed on my desk. It really is an industry killer. There's pretty much nothing that compares to it from my experience and in my opinion. But you do pay a pretty penny for it. It's just launched, but its RRP, if you were to buy one camera on its own, is £249. But technically, you are getting a significant amount more coverage than a fixed camera. And considering that you're getting 3 individual cameras with 2 angles and tracking at the same time, £249 is actually pretty reasonable. If you bought 3 individual cameras, one with a wide to cover a wide angle, one to cover another wide angle, and then another zoom camera, you'd easily spend £250 or more. So when you put that into perspective, £249 is actually not bad. But I'll drop a link in the description for you so you can take a look yourself. And as always, for those watching on TV, I'll drop the QR code just there for you. But there's a few other packages that you can buy as well, such as multiples of the camera and packages with the Homebase 3 already included, which, if you're considering, I definitely recommend for the additional features that you get. As well, you get things like external storage in the Homebase as well, so you're taking the storage from the camera and placing that in the Homebase. So there's lots of benefits to having it. So if you haven't got one, I'd advise it. But remember, it's not needed for the S4 to be a fantastic piece of kit regardless. Should you buy the S4 if you have something like the S340 already? Well, that's up to you. This is a significant improvement over it, so consider that. But if you have multiple eufy cameras, this is a no-brainer because you can consolidate those into a single camera, and it gives you improvements over the previous ranges. So it would be a significant upgrade no matter what you have from the eufy range. Should you get it if you don't have any security cameras? Or should you get it if you have another brand's security cameras? Without a doubt. I am 99.9999999% certain that you'll love this camera. And for me, the S4 has found a permanent place in my smart home security setup.